You bring in as much as you can. You bring in a shit ton of money, and you send out very little.
Wow, brilliant.
That's business.
That's exactly what business is.
Yeah. I mean, it all boils down to that, no matter what you do.
Today's show is sponsored by Enigma Elements. As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. After working as an editor, colorist, post, and VFX supervisor for almost 30 years, I know what film creatives need to level up their projects. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order. I'll be adding new elements all the time. Again, that's Enigma, ENIGMA, elements.com.
I'd like to welcome to the show Steve Weiss, the legendary Steve Weiss from Zacuto. Thank you, man, so much for being on the show, Steve.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, man. I've been a big fan of not only your gear, but of the stuff you do with your content as well, which we'll talk about later. But thanks again for hopefully going to be dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe today.
Sounds great.
First thing, how did you get into the film business?
Wow, good question. So my father was a photographer, and that was I've been a photographer since I've probably been 10, so for 46 years.
Okay.
And Jens was also a photographer, and most people in this business sort of who go way back, started in the photography game. And then we made home movies on Super 8 and whatnot. And then my dad wanted me to make a kind of a corporate film for his dental office. So I made that. And then around 1980 or 81, I kind of decided I had this idea that I wanted to create videos that would be in department stores. And I know that sounds kind of stupid when I say that, but at that time, there was never, I went to department stores and fashion manufacturers, and they were like, well, they just didn't even get the concept.
Okay.
And pretty much that's been my kind of whole career. We kind of came up with doing fashion videos, and then we came up with kind of doing corporate films that are more documentaries. And then we decided to get into this HD camera rental game where there were only 100 HD cameras in the world. And then we decided to create equipment. We're sort of the first to do a lot of stuff with the equipment. And now we're entering this sort of live show market, which, with these, as a business, with these built sets, so far you've seen 2 of them, but we have 4 more coming. And we're going to be renting these live stages to, not really renting, we're developing, helping businesses to create, maybe 30, 40, 50 videos a year that they can rank for on various topics, much like what Zacuto does. We use videos to educate and entertain, and then people come to our site. Some may buy our gear, some may not, but we're what you do is you solidify yourself as the known expert in your field.
It seems like, from studying and following you for so many years, you guys seem to always be a little bit ahead of the curve. You're always looking ahead, where a lot of people just get really comfortable, because I can imagine you could have been very comfortable just doing HD rentals for a long time and not have to go into all these other things. But you always seem to push yourself. You always seem to kind of see you kind of at least think about what's coming around the corner. And now your new thing with live streaming, it's very fascinating. It's really interesting to see how you do that. I'm assuming that's hard sometimes to constantly be pushing yourself that way.
Well, without that, there's no life, it's Jens and I have a philosophy, and Jens, who was my DP since 1983, so we've worked together for 35 years. We have a philosophy that if we can't make something better or new or figure out what trends are happening, then we just won't do it. We've actually never made a matte box. Everybody's like, well, how come you have all the stuff but you don't have a matte box? And we're like, because the ones that are out there are really good and I don't have any way of improving it. So I'm just not going to do it. Although I do now. I've come up with an interesting matte box that we're working on. But like our follow focus is this sort of weird Z drive thing that kind of comes out the front and acts as sort of a hand grip. You know, we were in corporate video for 20 years, and then we took a little hiatus until we got into doing all the videos that we started with Zacuto, dating back to about 2007, when you could actually stream something on the web. Probably done close to 1,000 videos there. And then we had done about 700 videos before that, you know, when it was hard, when you had to do offline edits, online edits, you know. We shot on film. All the fashion projects we did were all film projects because the garments didn't look good in NTSC video. So, yeah, we are constantly having meetings where we sit around and try to figure out what the future is.
Very cool. Now, I have to ask you a question. It's an age-old question. Film school or no film school?
No film school. No school. So
just stay uneducated as long as you can.
No, and that's part of, I think, what is good, because so I learned everything from people, you know, and my problem today, and I've talked about this, is that what's lost is this collaboration process. You know, you have the ability to shoot, edit, do sound mixing, you know, be a cinematographer, do all these things. When I came up in the business, there were 5 people you needed in an edit room. You needed a Chiron operator, an editor, an edit assistant, a tape operator. My wife was many of these positions in the editorial business. So a lot is lost in this concept of no collaboration. And I try to explain this to young people, and they're like, well, you know, I wrote my script. Why would I want to go to a script doctor? And I'm like, okay, here's how I look at it. So when I direct nowadays, when I was, you know, in my 20s, I used to go, okay, I want this, and this. I don't do that anymore. Now I give zero direction. Walk up. Jens and I just shot a TV pilot, and the actors were all like, what does he want? And Jens is like, oh, this is how he does it, man. You know, because he's my DP. And they're just, and I just don't say anything. Because what I get then is their interpretation of that scene in their role. And 9 times out of 10, I was like, whoa, I didn't envision that. And I like that. I can always give a line reading. I can always give a direction. But your best bet, work with other people, see what they bring to the table. When I edit with people, I don't go in the edit room. I give them all. I've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years. I give all the material to them with zero direction and just see what they do. They may do something that you never envisioned, and you'll go, my God, I love that. Then you add your 5%, and it's even better than you ever envisioned.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No film school.
Yeah, there is so much information out there now too that you really shouldn't incur $100,000 worth of debt, where you can learn a lot on the street, if you will, either online and then also just by doing it and collaborating.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I started off shooting weddings. I forgot about that part but I spent 2 years doing weddings when it was hard. You know, we didn't have HD cameras and stuff. You know, you had to have a 3/4-inch recorder and, you know, a cart full of videotapes. And but I learned a ton because you work in a one-take environment, and which is kind of what I'm doing now. And sort of what, you know, I'm back to the one-take environment, but the one-take environment forces you to be incredibly creative, and that is a wonderful thing. And being able to just go and shoot and know you're shooting constantly, you just get better and better and better. And every time, you know, I had a kid one time tell me, when I did a Film Fellows show, and I asked someone, I said, would you rather shoot weddings and do one independent film a year? And the one kid said, no, I'd rather just work at Starbucks and just do my independent film a year. I said, but do you think if you shot 100 weddings in 1 year that you would learn stuff that might make your independent film better? And he thought about it. He's like, oh, yeah, I would make a lot of mistakes. And you know, Jens and I, every time we finish a project, even though we're on project 1800, we do a postmortem. And other people do, too. We were on a film with Stephen Goldblatt, this movie called Get On Up, about James Brown. And even there, he says the same thing. And when I did that light and shadow show, every major DP that I've ever interviewed says, you got to do a postmortem and you got to look at what you learned, because you learn nothing from success. You win a big award and you're like, oh, well, yeah, it's great. It feels wonderful. But you learn nothing. You only learn from failing.
Very, very true. And I think so many filmmakers are afraid of failing. They just don't want to fail. They want to hit it out of the park every time. But there's a lot to be said about taking swings and aiming for, singles, as opposed to constantly hitting for home runs all the time. You got to learn.
Well, nobody hits a home run every time. But even if you win, there are things that you can learn that you didn't do well. So like, what did we learn? Oh yeah, we learned something interesting when we shot this TV pilot last year. I kind of had this idea that I just wanted to have it be, snappy dialogue constantly, just really chit-chatty, real quick like that. It's a millennial type audience. But then I realized that I didn't shoot enough close-ups. Cutaways. I didn't shoot enough cutaways, but I didn't envision using the cutaways. Well, I needed the cutaways. So the postmortem was, even though you're doing a super chit-chatty show and you may like how it came out, there are things you need to, I learned something.
You always learn something from every project you do, without question.
Exactly. Well, if you're smart enough to sit back and do the postmortem.
Now, in today's world, I mean, I know you work with a lot of younger filmmakers, camera people and stuff. A lot of times I find that they are so enthralled with the gear. They're so like, it's the latest this or the latest 8K that or the latest Red or the latest Alexa or HD, Sony or whatever. And they're not focusing on story. Would you agree on that?
Yeah. Look, I sell gear, but I'm going to tell you something that's really bad. That up until when we did Light and Shadow, I don't know if you saw that show.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. That's probably one of the favorite pieces that we've made. We shot that on a tape-based Varicam.
Okay.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, when was that? When did that get released?
2012. No, 2013.
So you were still
5 years ago.
Yeah, the hard drive. Yeah, hard drives were still coming up.
Oh no, they had C300s and all this stuff.
Right.
Jens likes to have an E&G zoom lens, like a $27,000 lens, where he can do that. So like when we were interviewing people and you feel the little heartstrings coming, he does a very light zoom right in there so that it right into the eyes, and it really builds the emotion, and, we didn't use any Zacuto gear for a long time. Now, this TV pilot that we did, we actually shot with a C300 Mark II, and we used all our gear, and it was nice. But you don't need gear. I mean, look, I sell gear, but I mean, if you can afford it, and that's wonderful. But what you said is absolutely true. And I want to do a show. You could actually be on this show if you want.
Sure.
The show I want to do it was going to be the very first live show we did, but it just didn't seem to work out. We had some technical issues. But if I were to give you 10 items like script, rehearsals, food, tripod, camera,
right,
lights, sound man, what order would you put those in as if you were going to budget for those and spend money on them? Camera and gear for me come at the bottom.
Right.
Food is number one. You can't shoot without food. People do budgets and they never figure that, what 4 meals a day is going to be for everyone on your set. Rehearsals, number 2. Well, script is number 1. Food is number 2. Rehearsals is number 3. Script doctoring is number 4. People say, oh, wow, I must have went through 9 rounds of script doctoring on my script because I thought it was great. But when I went to the script doctor, he would be like, how about this? And you'd be like, oh my God, yeah, that's so right. It creates so much more conflict.
Right.
That's what they do. So don't get hung up on gear. Listen to the last line of Light and Shadow. The guy says, if you think that anyone in Hollywood gives a damn what camera you use, they don't. It's all about talent, creativity, and your content.
Isn't it amazing that we're the only industry that I can even think of that asks what tool you use, as opposed to like, a carpenter, like what brand of hammer are you using? Or plumber, what kind of plunger are you using? Is it this kind of plunger? Because I heard that one's the best. It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, you have producers now that ask about that, where I think that is something that came up pretty much since kind of like when the Reds came out, where the producers started getting savvy.
I would agree.
Yeah, when they started getting savvy, like, is it a Red? Is it an Alexa? Is it a Genesis? All that kind of stuff, right?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, to be honest with you, they're not going to tell you this fact, but still, I think 75% of all TV films are shot with an Alexa at 2.5K.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, they don't even meet the mandate
for Netflix.
4K. Right. But I still think somehow they're getting their stuff on there. I don't know, because everywhere you go, all you see is people using Alexas. Yes, they're using Red cameras, but we had an interesting conversation yesterday here. We had somebody here from Germany that wants us to take two graphical eyes or something and make use them for operations,
Mm-hmm.
in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing a 3D dual eye graphical thing.
Nice. And
he's like, but is it 4K? I'm like, no, when you use the two of them together, it's 2.5. We're going to want 4K. I'm like, so I'm like, you will not, your eye isn't capable of resolving that much resolution an inch from your face.
Right.
It's not possible. You max out at a certain level. And he's like, and would I make a 4K EVF? Yeah, I would, because people buy on numbers, but it's not going to look any better. Right. So I personally, when I shot my pilot, actually, I think we did shoot it in 4K, but I would have been fine shooting in 1080 because I didn't know the outcome of it. But like all the things I do on the web, I only do in 1080.
I mean,
I don't shoot 4K.
My last feature, I shot at 1080p on the pocket camera, and I did a DCP projection of it. And it looks gorgeous. It's stunning.
I will give you an example. If you, the movie The Celebration.
Yeah, of course. I remember that one.
It's Dogma.
Mm-hmm.
That movie, people need to watch that. It was shot on one of these like little palm cameras that had the little open door where the monitor opened.
It's a consumer one. Yeah, it was an old consumer home video thing. Yeah. They
had $1 million budget for that film.
I did not know that they had $1 million budget for that film. Holy cow.
Oh, all the money went into actors, sets, and there wasn't even a lot of sets. Food, I mean, but $1 million goes pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But what made that film amazing is in the first 5 seconds, all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, what's going on here? It's
right.
Like it grabs you, and the story was incredible. The acting was amazing. Once you get past that first 2 seconds, it's irrelevant. And actually, Jens and I have a saying. Bad picture could be a creative choice.
Mm-hmm.
Bad sound is intolerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I put sound infinitely higher on the ladder than video. These kids, they'll buy cameras and Zacuto gear and all this stuff, and that's wonderful. But I always say to them, they're like, well, I should buy some audio gear. I'm like, don't do that. Get a sound man who has his own audio gear. And they're like, well, that could be really expensive. I'm like,
yes.
Yeah, you got that right. But when I hear an indie film and it's all echoey and, it sounds terrible, the first thing I'm like, oh, wow, this is low budget. I'm out. It just doesn't. There's something about incredible sound that gives you a perception of watch something that has the most amazing sound design and a horrible picture. And you're like, all right, whatever. Obviously, they wanted that gritty flavor to it. It's all about sound, man.
Without question. And you're absolutely right. Like, you watch Blair Witch Project and the images weren't horribly great, or Paranormal Activity weren't horribly great, considering in the cinematic world, but their sound was top notch.
Yeah, it's got to be great, man. It really does. And it's hard to get good sound on location. Hollywood has a hard time with it.
I was lucky when I ran around Sundance for 4 days shooting my last film, and the sound guy was amazing, and we labbed it all up, and it sounded remarkable. I was lucky I had a good sound guy, but if not, the movie doesn't work.
I like that you said that, because so many indie filmmakers, they think if they don't have a short shotgun like a Sennheiser 416 boom with a Zeppelin. It's not movie making. Often, body mics can be the most amazing sound you can get. So it's like no matter what I shoot, we go body mic and a boom mic. Even if I'm doing an interview, I do a body mic, and then I might do, if I don't even have an interview, sometimes I'll bypass the boom mic because if, people need to realize that a body mic is very closely mic'd. And if you've got a lot of extraneous sound, you're not going to hear that. A shotgun tends to, it's also directional, but you have to get that thing at the exact right angle. And if there's air conditioning sound and things like that, it's going to pick it up. Where a body mic, the mushroom cloud, the mushroom shape of the sound is not going to go so far away that is going to pick up the air conditioning. So often when we shoot in our studio, there's like a yoga thing above us. And they're jumping up and down, and people look at me like, "Is that going to be in the thing?" I'm like, "Nah, you won't even hear it."
Exactly.
Not going to hear it. In our old stage, it had one of these metal elevator gates, and it was always slamming, and never heard it.
If you know what you're doing, it really does help.
Well, we use the body mic. A body mic is very good for that, but booms give you a more fuller sound. So the body mics can be kind of muffy. You got to get the right kind. Like, I'm a sinking guy.
I mean, get two. Always shoot both. If you can shoot both systems, great. Body mic and a boom, best of both worlds. But we didn't have that option because we were running around Sundance guerrillaing the entire movie. So I couldn't be walking around with a boom. So it worked out great. But we did boom a few things interior, and it sounded great. Now,
it's right tool. That's another topic you should be talking about.
Okay.
This is the problem I have today.
Tell me.
Is that you buy a camera, you buy a certain kind of audio gear, you buy a certain kind of lights. And I've often used this example. Look, if I'm in a jungle and I'm jumping out of a Humvee, I don't want a red camera. I want a GH5.
Right.
But if in the old days, we rented the gear for the job. So like when we did a thing, I'm trying to think of some of the things that we've done in the, like back in the 80s and stuff. Oh yeah, like when we're doing a fashion film. So if they have a lot of, curvy lines on their clothing, you can't be using video. You have to shoot on film because it would all just sort of moray with the horizontal lines going. So we would decide, are we going 35, 16? How much money do we have? Then we do that. Sometimes we would, rent Ikegami cameras because we knew the look of them. Sometimes we owned a camera that we would use sometimes. So now that people don't rent, I would say don't try to buy everything. Rent some stuff that's just right for that job. You don't need to own a drone because unless you're a terrific drone pilot, get a drone pilot that'll get you the amazing shot. Get a sound man that'll get you the amazing sound. Don't necessarily be your own DP. There are other guys out there that could be better than you. And bring something. Jens brings something to me. He adds him. It's not just the camera. So, be careful to use the right gear. Like you said, if you had to run around with a red on your job, you just talked about. Yeah, right. But if you owned a red, what are you going to do?
Right. That's why I picked a smaller camera, and I owned a Blackmagic Ursa 4.6K. I owned that gear, but I wasn't about to take that and run around. I wouldn't have been able to move as fast. You're right. Right tool for the right job, without question.
Right. Well, and you probably got better shots because you got the moment. One of the issues that I have is it's called getting the moment. When you're doing a documentary, for instance. Some people want to try to have a dolly or some kind of a slider or a move or something. You're better with a zoom lens, man. A zoom lens, you can always get that moment. You just creep right in there, like we talked about earlier. So that's the right tool for that job. It's critical because if you show up late, you miss the moment. I'd rather have it look a little shittier and have the moment because there's nothing quite like in a documentary just having that quintessential moment that makes the project you just want to cry. That's that.
Without question. Now we kind of touched upon this, but a lot of people are so obsessed with owning all their own gear as opposed to renting their gear. And I come from a time when you couldn't own gear, and yeah, you definitely do so where you had no option other than to rent an Arri SR 3 to go out and shoot that project or 35 mil or even bigger video cameras back in the day. What do you say to people today? Like, if you are going to buy one piece of gear, and I have an answer for this, so I want to hear what you think. If you're going to buy one piece of gear, what's the smart investment now, as opposed to, because cameras are turning over every 18 months. They're just every 18 months. There's a new.
Oh, try every 6 months. Yeah, come on.
Every
month. It's interesting. It's a good topic because in the old days we would buy. I don't know if you can see this camera, but there's
the red
one. Yes, so I own this one and then I own that one.
Yeah.
Those cameras lasted me a good 8 years. I used those. And okay. So the key, what would I do? I'd buy like a GH5, an A7, something like that, because you can run in the jungle with that, which is really good. You can get really nice, you can get gorgeous video. You're light and portable. And then if I were shooting like a TV pilot or a short film or something like that, myself, okay, I wouldn't do this because I have my own DP that I've worked with, but I would never operate or be a DP. Now, these are different topics, but the idea of having an operator, a DP, and a director. But regardless, let's just skip that. I would, frankly, you can, by just hiring a guy, his equipment adds so little to these people are all shooting themselves in the foot now. It doesn't even really pay to own gear because, like in the old days, Jens was a Steadicam owner operator in the 80s. So he would get, $800 a day for him and $1,200 a day for his gear. Now you get like $800 a day. I don't know what the going rates of people are, but let's say you get $800 a day for you, and it's like $1,200 a day for you and your gear. The gear doesn't really get you a lot of money, and I've noticed that many people just want the job and they end up giving the gear. They don't even charge for the gear.
Correct.
So I would own a small, little, inexpensive camera so I could do a lot of little things with it, and then I would rent things like an Epic or an Alexa, or I would try to get a DP that owned that gear and get him in his gear, because there is one great thing about having a guy who owns his own gear. He knows his kit. It's like when we go and we shoot, we always get a light truck, and we get the dude. We don't go to like a big lighting company. We go to a guy that owns his own, 1-ton, 2-ton truck, who knows where everything on the truck is. And when we say, here, we need a joker, we need this, he goes, he gets it, he brings it out, he hooks it up, and that's it. I don't have to figure out where all this crap is. All these little things slow you down. So a guy who owns his own gear is a great thing. Soundman owns his own gear. Shooter owns his own gear. Lighting truck owns his own gear.
If you're a director or a filmmaker who is, let's say gear literate and gear intensive, like I am, like I'm a gearhead. I don't own a lot of gear, but the things I do, I really love. So my suggestion always is, if you're going to purchase gear, purchase lenses. Glass is not going to go out as bad. You're still dealing with.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, I know, right?
We don't know that yet. There could be, like, for instance, I have a lot of $25,000 lenses here that are not HD. They're from, they don't have the right coating for HD. They were like B4 lenses for beta cams and things like
that. Sure.
Those kinds of cameras. So you're probably right. You're probably
in the film world, and if you get film glass, cinema glass, that's going to last.
No, actually, the original cinema glass was not 4K either.
No, it isn't. You're correct. Yeah. You have to get it rehoused, and if it's even worth it.
No, but some guys like that look of not having it be 4K. There's a sort of kind of a look, But I would agree with you. For the most part, everybody says, yes, lenses are the best investment. But a lot of people, I had a guy the other day that called me up and he's like all upset because his Canon mount, he's like, you should make your gear where the lenses don't wobble. I'm like, dude, you're using a toy. That is a Canon mount is a toy.
Compared to a PL, of course.
Well, or any bayonet mounted system. These are not professional mounts. We build lens support and all this stuff, but it's all we're doing is slapping a Band-Aid on something.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order. And now back to the show.
So, we got to realize that as far as I'm concerned, the only two cameras that are really production grade might be the Baricam, the Epic, or the Red, and the Alexa.
The Blackmagic one's up there too, with the PL.
I don't know. I've never really played with those, but the C300 is too plasticky for me. Doesn't have enough screws on the bottom. They rock them. Even if you get the lens solid, then the mount rocks. If you get the mount solid, then the body rocks. It's like it's a stackable amount of errors. The Sony, all of the ones but the F55 are plasticky. I don't mean to badmouth these cameras, but they're cheap and they're not production quality like these cameras that are hanging on the wall here. They're still great, and then 30 years later, you can drop them on the ground, throw them in your trunk. That's an issue for me.
And you talked a little bit about your gear, because that's where a lot of people know you and know your brand of Zacuto. Where did you start designing and manufacturing camera gear, and what was the genesis of that?
Good question. Okay, so here's how it went. In 2000, Jens and I, we sold a production company. We're like, okay, we're done. We need a break. So we said, let's go into this rental business. We took a year off or two, and then we said, let's go into this rental business. And we married with the Panasonic Varicam. There was also the Sony Cine Alta at that time. But there were not a lot of any of these cameras. At one point, we had 3 of the 100 Varicams that were out there. These are, $85,000 camera bodies, So that was a great business for like 3 years. We rented those things all over the place. Sports entities, the Barack Obama's campaign, many other political entities, So all of a sudden, Panasonic puts out this HVX 200.
Yeah, great camera.
And we call the CEO, and we're like, dude, we got $300,000 worth of Varicams here. This thing kind of just wipes that all off the map for $5,000. And he's like, he says to me, he goes, we are a consumer company. I'm like, okay, well, that you should have told me that 3 years ago. But we had made our money out of those cameras. So we bought some of these HVX 200s and we put them in our rental area. And we noticed quickly that they were unusable. You didn't hold it like this.
Remember? Yeah.
So Jens and I said, well, what if we made something for our rental department where we built, put it on a base plate and kind of created some hand grips and had a shoulder pad. And we built it for our rental department. And then we rented it out. And within minutes, people were saying, oh, whoa, that's really cool. Can I buy that? And we were like, I guess so, so we started, but we never have an engineering background. We never envisioned that we would ever be making shit. We never did any of that. And it just sort of came about.
Right. And that was it. And you just kind of fell into it.
Yeah. And then it was within a year, we were really cranking on this stuff. And then when I saw an early, Jens and I had talked about this idea of a DSLR years before the DSLR. And then we saw that an early version of what is that thing called? The 5D Mark II.
Right.
And we got one here, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. Because one time we opened up his Nikon and said, why can't we just put a sensor right here? So we took the back plate off. And then we don't know that. You know how that came about? Because remember when we used those depth of field adapters?
Oh God, yes. Yeah.
The lettuce and,
Yeah.
Brian's unit, which was amazing. It was a brilliant idea. Brian was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we were like, well, okay, so essentially that's a telecine. We're shooting a spinning disc.
Yes.
And projecting on the disc. I said, but why don't we just project right through the 35 millimeter camera onto a sensor? So we get this early version of the 5D Mark II, and we're like, immediately I'm like, oh my God, I go into my Hasselblad bag because I thought you were going to be able to look through the viewfinder and we'd be optically focusing. I was like, this is going to be amazing.
Right.
So that killed it right there. So then I go, oh, Hasselblad bag. I go in there and I pull out what they had, looks pretty much like a Z Finder.
Mm-hmm.
And I stuck it on the back of that. And I'm like, dude, we need to make this. So we whipped one together. We ran that. This was in March. We run the NAB and we had like a rig that looked like a whole gun stock and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're running around NAB and everyone is laughing at us. Laughing at us.
So like DSLR, what is that?
Abel was our dealer. He's like, you got to be kidding me. Nobody's going to use this. It's not production. You can't do anything with it. Even Philip Bloom laughed at me. And then I said, he was going to Hawaii. And I said, just take this camera to Hawaii and see what you can do with it. I'm telling you, this is the future. And he took it, and then he made a couple videos. Like within days, he had them up on the internet, and all of a sudden, it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But
I remember those, yeah. And then he got called. Yeah, he was on the show before, and he got called the Lucas, the Skywalker to shoot some stuff and all that stuff.
I was there with him actually.
Were you? That place must be pretty magical. I haven't been there yet.
We were there a couple times because 2-3 times now because we screened 2 of our shootouts there.
Oh yes, that's right.
I think we screened our 2011 and our 2012 one there. And when we screened the 2012 one there, we're just hanging around waiting to go into the theater, and Francis Ford Coppola walks in.
Right.
I'm like,
Francis?
Well, I walked up to him. I said, we're going to be shooting in here. And he's like, yeah, do your thing, man. You're the director. Do whatever you got to do. And I said, well, are you okay being on the
show?
Yeah. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. It's your thing. Don't let me tell you what to do. He was like the most gracious person you could ever possibly meet. And then we play it, and his is the first hand up. First hand. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, Francis, what do you got to say? But ever since then, he's a very interesting, friendly guy. He'll text me, and, he's just really nice. I mean, kind of strange things like, I'm at B&H. What kind of battery do I need for this?
Right.
I'm like, don't you have people that do this for you? He's like, I like doing things myself.
Yeah, actually, I had the conversation with the I think the president of Blackmagic, and when the first cinema cameras came out, Francis was like one of the first guys in line.
He's very much into technology.
Very much.
I've created rigs for him and his wife, and actually his wife's going to be on one of our shows.
Oh, that's
because
amazing.
she made
Hearts of Darkness.
Hearts of Darkness.
Oh,
yeah, we're doing a show about the difference between documentaries and propaganda documentaries. So like her is an actual documentary where she's not trying to. It's not like a Michael Moore piece where he starts with a premise and goes on proving it.
Right.
She unfolds the story as it goes along, So anyway, so she's hopefully, I kind of got a so-so agreeable that she'll be on that show. And David Grubin's going to be on that show, who does like all of the American Experience.
Oh, that's amazing. That movie, Hearts of Darkness, should be required viewing by every filmmaker.
Amazing.
Oh.
Incredible documentary.
Wow.
So I built a rig for her because her and Francis actually just made a film, sort of real small little thing, and she was going to DP it, and so I kind of built a rig for her and everything, and I'm trying to remember what camera she was using. It started with the Blackmagic. No, which was the Blackmagic the first one that had like that big screen on the back?
Yes,
it was like a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Francis had a couple of those, and I kind of got him away from that because that was sort of hard to shoot with in the configuration that they wanted to. But I don't remember. I think they were using FS7s or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some pictures of them doing some BTS shots and stuff. But the movie's out, actually.
What's it
I don't
called?
remember the name of it. I don't remember the name of it, but if you go in and type in Ellie Coppola, it'll list the film and you can see it. It's a small movie. It is not a giant movie.
Nice, because I know she just directed. I think she directed that movie with Diane Lane that goes throughout Europe, like on like a trip or something like that. It's kind of like a romantic comedy. I saw that like a year ago. I mean, is that probably not that one? Probably another one.
No, I think it is that one.
Is it that one? It looked great.
I think it is.
It looked fantastic.
I think it is that one.
It is that one.
Yeah, because I remember him texting me from Paris or somewhere, and they had questions. Yeah, it was that.
That's the one then with Diane Lane. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you guys started creating not if it wasn't enough building a gear empire with Zacuto, you decided to start opening up like Zacuto Films and creating original content, and you were way ahead of the curve with web and creating content for the web. Like I said before we started, one of my favorite shows that you did was Film Fellas, because I found you because I was looking for mumblecore stuff. And that's when I found you. I was like,
that's the first episode.
Yeah, I was like, that was with Joe Swansburg and his wife and all that. And I was just like, I was sitting there going, wow, this is
Weiss,
yeah, it was amazing stuff. So what was the idea about creating this kind of content?
Okay. And I can tell you exactly where it started from. And I say this all the time.
Sure.
I was sitting with Pete Abel from Able Syntech. And he was like he wanted to get into doing videos on Vimeo. And this was in 2007 when Vimeo was new.
Right.
And you could just barely get a good HD video out there.
But they were better than YouTube.
Well, there was another guy that was doing it. What was it called? There was another...
Dailymotion? You mean the other website?
Yeah.
There was YouTube, Dailymotion, and Vimeo, if I'm not mistaken. Is it Dailymotion? Something like that.
No, it was some guy that...
Oh, Bright Cove? Maybe? I don't know.
So Pete says to me, he goes, dude, you've been like making productions for 20 years. Why aren't you like creating something for the web? So I was like, And at that point, I was kind of, even my wife said, you guys have had sort of like about a 7-year gap and she could tell that my creative juices were kind of just not really, I mean, making products is really creative and fun, but I kind of didn't want to shoot a thing after I had retired for 20 years. And all of a sudden I was like really kind of feeling the need to make something. So Jens and I were like, okay, we'll make a video. So we did one where didn't know what we were doing. We were kind of talking to each other and talking to the camera, and it just wasn't working. And we sat around and we're like, wow, what if we made something that was like this sort of thing where we're moving around this table and it had that feel like in Goodfellas.
Right.
And the hardest thing in this business is to name something. It's like we can make products all day long. Then we sit around for weeks trying to name it.
Right?
Oh, my God. It's brutal.
It is.
So we're sitting around going over names. And all of a sudden, Jens just says, oh, God, it should just really be like Film Fellas. Because from Goodfellas.
Right.
So I was like, perfect. We're searching the web. Is there any Film Fellas out there? And so then we made that first episode because at that time Swanberg we were kind of lending him gear to do some of his early films because he's here in Chicago and we had a rental department. And so I was like, dude, you want to be on our show? And he was like, yeah, sure. And his wife was doing this, Young American Body show on IFC. And that Susan Weiss, who we had on there, had this really interesting web thing that I saw called I can't remember what it was.
Four-Eyed Monster?
Yeah, Four-Eyed Monster.
Yeah.
I really liked it. So we flew her in here, and that was it. We did Film Fellas, we did 9 seasons or something of that, and then we did Critics. We did like 3 seasons, and then we did 2 live ones at various NABs, and then another live one, and now we brought it back again live, which I kind of like. And we did this BTS show which was really hard, actually.
That seems like hard. It looks insane.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, and these shootouts, people don't realize, people would like send me an email. Where's your next shootout? I'm like, whoa, easy. First off, these cost $100,000 and we're funding them ourselves. Right. And, or light funding. Eric Kessler helped fund some of them, and, Fuji funded a little bit of one. Sure. But for the most part, we were footing the bill for these things. And And they took a year to make. And those were really complex projects and a ton of research.
So something like the camera shootouts and all of this content, you're basically funding yourself. The purpose of it, what is the purpose of it, other than just getting your creative juices flowing, just so the audience understands your mindset?
The purpose is, it's interesting. I'm not going to lie. It's a part of a marketing scheme or plan, I mean, if you're from Europe or not. But the idea is that, and it's what we're doing right now with our live stages. So our live stage business, we want to be able to go to like a criminal lawyer, and we want to say, look, if we make a video for you every single week, a live show that's not about you, it's like, I lost my finger on the job.
Educational.
What can I expect? What happens? What is the process? You don't sit there and say, you don't ever hear me on my videos. Unless I'm making a product video, I will never, ever, ever say the word Zacuto. It's not what I do. As a matter of fact, people commented that on the shootouts, I used to use all of our competitors' gear because I didn't want people to say that this was an ad. I would call Brian at Red Rock and use some of his gear and Cinnovate's gear and some other people's gear, because we are so serious about our content either being informative, entertainment, or educational that we do not want to, look at the light and shadow. I mean, there's no word Zacuto ever mentioned until the end.
Mm-hmm.
None. We want to make straight up real professional entertainment. So it all started like that. I mean, we just started creating the content, but the purpose was, we figured that, one, we wanted to be able to educate the community. We want to be known as the known expert in our field. Now, Jens and I are different than most of these other manufacturers in the respect that we build equipment for us. We built that first batch of equipment for us so we could use it. We're filmmakers that make equipment for filmmaking. A lot of people don't realize that, I've been in this industry for 35 years. I've only been making gear since 2000. I don't even know when that HVX 200 came out.
Mm-hmm.
8 or
that was in, So that 4,
9, 10. No,
something like 6, 7, 8, 9. Something like
that. But that's the new part of my life.
Right.
My entire career since I've been a little kid has been doing corporate, commercial, documentary, fashion, music, all these types of filmmaking. So we figured that if we make the content that because we enjoy it, and two, it exposes us to the community, and people learn that, oh, these cats must know what they're doing. They obviously have been in the film business. They design gear, so it does kind of solidify us as known experts. And it's the same thing we want to do with these live stages now to other businesses. So when you do a web search, I lost my finger at work, some guy educates you on that, most likely you're going to go with that guy.
The chances are, without question. Yeah, I mean, I would buy Zacuto gear faster than I would buy some of your competitors purely because of your content.
Well, that's nice, but yeah, okay.
No, but it's true. Yeah. Because you've become, because you look at and this is a different conversation, but I do believe that in today's world, people are looking for authenticity. People are looking for a connection, a human connection, because we are so bombarded with ads that I would rather hear you talk for an hour with Joe Swanberg about something. And, oh, by the way, this is the guy who also makes this amazing camera gear. That connection is something that I think so many people are looking for when they spend their money.
But I don't say that. I never, ever say.
But that's the point.
My name. I'm very cautious about that.
Right, but that's even better.
Unless I'm doing a product video. If I'm doing a product
video,
of course, it's all about sale. Like the live show tomorrow is going to be on our new red kits. Mm-hmm. And, we're just going to be, we're not even really going to be hawking our red kits. We're just going to talk about the philosophy that we came to approach this red kit, which is what we do with everything, which is universal nature, balance. That's our one thing that we will jam down everybody's throats. And it's got to be durable and be able to work in the future. That's the thing. We don't really make a lot of camera-specific gear. All universal. And, when you come from the old school, cameras were balanced. You put it on your shoulder. It was meant to be used all day.
So, Steve, I want to ask you one question that I get asked all the time, and I'd love to hear your point of view. And you actually did a whole series about this, is how do you make money being in the film industry, being a filmmaker. It's so difficult to just, if you could do it once a little bit, but guys like you and like I've been doing this for 25 years and I've been able to make a living for those 25 years most of the time. And I'm assuming there've been times like that for you as well, but you've been able to sustain yourself in a creative environment. How do you do that?
Well, we actually had a very successful production company from 1983 to 2000, and we sold it, which is hard to do. It's a really hard thing to do. But we sold it to a company that had design senses. It was a design company that wanted to go into doing meeting events, videos, the whole thing, and so it was a good fit. But this is my formula, and I said this a million times. I'm going to say it one more time. The only way you get two creative dudes that come together and they're like, let's start a production company. The average production company lasts 5 years. That is a shitty formula for a production company. The winning formula for a production company is a businessman whose sole job is to get work. Okay? That is a very creative person and a creative guy who does or manages the work. So it depends how big your operation is. Our production company, we had several salespeople with a sales director, and then we had a couple of producers. I was the director. We would hire freelance directors. We had a composer, because there wasn't the kind of music like now. And we had a stage manager. We had a stage. We had, a fairly decent-sized production company. And we would at times do up to 25 projects at once.
Wow.
So we were doing a lot of projects, especially for meetings and things like that. So, but the point is that if you're two creative dudes that come together and you go, let's start a production company, which is what everyone does. The second you start working a job, you're unemployed because you're not looking for work and you don't have one on the tail end or two on the tail end, or you're managing 4 at once. One time I did manage 25 projects at one time. And it was not that hard, surprisingly. You had teams of people that worked in round the clock, so you had various shifts, and I'd take, I'd kind of look at these 8, and then I'd look at these 8, and then I'd look at these 8, and I'd give comments, and they'd go off and do work, and they'd come back. And it is doable over a period of months. But I'm going to tell people, if you do not have, I fight people on this, a businessman that doesn't give a crap about the videos. It's like any other business, you would have a salesman. But why do these production companies, doctors are big on this, lawyers, they don't have a sales team?
Right.
And I hate to say this is going to be really painful to hear. I can get any dude to shoot something. I cannot get any dude to find something.
Amen.
He's got the harder job.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen. Amen. Are there a lot of sales schools out there? There's a lot of film schools out there, but there's not a lot of sales schools that teach you how to be a salesman.
Yeah, there are. It's called business school. That's what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Now, for instance, in my new live show company, I hired a 60-year-old salesman who sold paint for 30 years.
Okay.
And that's the guy I wanted. The people here are kind of young. They're like, whoa, what are you doing there, dude? I'm like, trust me. So my people, the young people, they can't cold call. This guy cold calls.
Yeah,
he
right.
picks up a phone and he loves it.
A phone. A phone. Like a phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A real phone. That's what you need. You need somebody who can do that. I've been very lucky. I've had sales. Every business I have, even Zacuto, we got 2 salespeople sitting in the office right here. They do sales. They deal with dealers. We have a customer service person. These are the essential components of a proper company, and, we have a bookkeeper, so that now, I'm not saying that you have to have all these people, but at a minimum, every company's got 2 people. And it's usually 2 guys that go, oh, if we get this, we could do this together, blah, 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 blah. Don't do that. And don't have 3 people, because 3 partners is too much to split the money up. 2 people, a businessman and a creative person, and everybody else you hire. And when you do a budget, it's 30, let's say it's 30 grand. I'm just using that for a round number. 10 grand off the top in your bank account. You don't touch it. The rest of the money, if you're working for 10 days as a director and you get 500 a day, that's 5,000 of that 20,000. Your DP, he gets paid in there. And just because you're there doesn't mean you don't get paid. People go, let me just look at what my cost basis is. No, you're part of your cost basis. Otherwise, you will not be profitable when you start doing multiple projects. Mm-hmm. Your equipment is part of the cost basis. Your editing time, your editing equipment, even though it's not a lot of money, you want to in 2 years you want to make 9,000 on the 5,000 you have invested into your edit equipment. So that's 16 grand. Mm-hmm. So we look at things that way, that everything you buy a piece of equipment, a camera for 5,000, I want to make 20,000 on that $5,000 investment. Otherwise I could go to the market.
Right.
So you have to look at this like a business. There's a cost basis, there's overhead, and there's profit. Do not spend that profit, and make sure you're in either and you have to factor in your rent, your
taxes,
all of that. All of that. It's part of your overhead. So you need to learn a little something about business. I should make a video. I'm going to do a live show.
You should.
About basic accounting.
You know what, man? I tell you, when I opened up my company in '96, and when I met my accountant, like for the first year or two, I didn't have the accountant, and then I met an accountant. He's like, "You need to, this is what you're writing off. This is an expense." Just basic understandings of things. Even at a simple one-man crew, it was just my company was me, but still, you need to know what that is.
I'm making a note here to do a live show about budgeting. I think I'm just going to I'm not doing it on accounting because
forget
it. That you can. There are videos on that. What you need is budgeting. How do I budget for a video? I actually do get that question a lot. People say, "How much should I charge?"
Mm-hmm. But the thing is that that's not very sexy. Cameras are sexy, lenses are sexy, but accounting isn't.
That's the companies.
Right. Correct.
Companies want to hear about money.
Exactly.
And my answer is as much as you can get.
Uh-huh.
And the general rule of business. I mean, I come from an old school European. We were in the rag business, my family. Mm-hmm. The general rule of business is you bring in as much as you can. You bring in a shit ton of money, mm-hmm. and you send out very little.
Wow, brilliant.
That's business.
That's exactly what business is.
Yeah. I mean, it all boils down to that, no matter what you do. I one time asked this guy that I sold that business to, I said, "Why do you come here every day?" Because he ran this business into a hole in the ground. He ran it like shit. Uh-huh. And he's like, "Oh, there's so many creative challenges, this, that, the other thing. It's just, I feel good about it." I'm like, "Wrong." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "The only answer is money." Otherwise, it's just a hobby. I get all these gratifications at home.
Sure.
Yes, I want to do great work. Yes, I want to have these gratifications. Yes, I want to make beautiful and wonderful videos. But if I can't make money, why am I doing it?
Well, you can't sustain yourself.
Right. And there is this sort of kind of, people look at you like it's a sin to talk about making money, but they do call this the film business, and the operative word is business.
I always say
in Hollywood, it's a business.
No, I always say the word show and the word business, and the word business has twice as many letters as the word show.
Good. I like that.
Stevie, you've been so generous with your time. I'm going to ask you a few questions that I ask all of my guests. And also, I want to thank you for jumping on IFH TV and being part of the new streaming service and having your amazing content on there. And I've already shown it to a few people. It hasn't gone live yet as of this recording, but people are like, "Holy cow, you got Zacuto stuff." It's like really, really an honor to have your stuff on my platform.
We're happy to do it. Yeah, happy to do it.
Very cool. All right, so what advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
Get a businessman.
Partner up with a business person.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
Oh, I'm not really a big reader.
Got it.
I'm not really educated. I don't know. Atlas Shrugged.
Got it. Fair enough. What lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
Wow, it's not often I'm stumped. I would say learning from failure, being okay. Oh no, I know what it is. It's kind of a mental disorder, but and I've noticed it with everybody in this industry is the perfection problem.
Oh,
you need to. A shrink one time told me, like, Steve, we know that you can do pretty good work. So she goes, I want you to reframe this, and this is an important thing because it changed my life. I used to do a project and I would look at it and I'd be like, it's not perfect. God, I can never, ever, ever get these things perfect. And it would cause me pain. Mm-hmm. Until I now say, I'm not going to try to get it perfect. I just want it good. And I always exceed my expectations.
Right. That's a very good lesson.
Shoot for good.
Shoot for good. And you'll get it a little bit better, hopefully.
You'll exceed your expectations. Because
if you go for perfection, you're never going to get there.
No, it's impossible. And then you will let yourself down.
Yeah, that's
and a lot of people in this industry have, obsessive compulsive disorder or bipolar or somewhere in between. I've never met anybody in this industry that's normal, because the creativity doesn't come from normal. It comes from our problems.
A little crazy. You need a little bit crazy.
Yeah. So that's really good advice.
What are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Dr. Zhivago, the original Planet of the Apes.
Nice.
And I don't know, that's a tough one. Maybe The Graduate.
Oh, what a great movie. What a great movie. So ahead of its time when that came out.
Oh my God, yeah.
Amazing. Did you ever hear the Criterion Collection of that movie, The Graduate?
No.
I saw it on Laserdisc, and it was amazing that they had this guy talking over it, and the way they broke that movie down was just like my mouth was on the floor.
Well, there were some editorial things happening when Benjamin's walking between Mrs. Robinson's room, her daughter's room, the pool, it was the first time I've seen invisible cuts like this where you don't realize where you are.
Right.
And editorially, that's the new ground was broken there, and Mike Nichols was a genius with that. And also the music.
And the framing.
Yeah, everything. Well, he was an incredible director.
Very, very, very good. And where can people find you and your work? And what you guys do?
You can go to Zacuto.com, and we have, all of our content there. We have stuff about our brand there. Whichever you're looking for. Education, or you're interested in our products, I don't care. Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Steve, man, thank you so much for dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe today. I really, really appreciate your time, man.
Okay, thank you.